Hi everyone, welcome back to my Python training. In this video we're going to look at file processing in Python. So this is a big step into more real-like applications where we're able to save data to a file or extract it from a file. In the next few videos we're going to work with Excel and bring data, columns and rows in from Microsoft Excel and bring that into our Python program and process it and compare. And this is actually something you can use in your office or at home. But first we have to start with files, and once we do that, then we'll move up to Excel. There are a couple of ways of creating a file in Pycharm for Python. One of the easiest ways is probably to right-click your project and go New, File, and give it a name. And your file is created under your project, so you don't have to worry about path or explicitly stating where the file is, so it's easily accessible. To put something in the file, we're in the new file here, we can type just so we can verify the contents of it. Okay, we can save that and go back to our program. And now to open the file, we simply give it a variable, my file, and use the open file function in Python. And that requires the name of the file, which is over here. And we're going to open it in read-only mode. There are three choices: read-only, write to create a new file or to write to a file, and append to a file. Again, there's several different ways to access the file. This is the most basic. We're simply going to print the file. A read line, again, is a function for the open file object in Python, and then this is the name of our file. So if we run this, we should be able to get the contents that we put in the file, which we did, my file here, and that's. If we leave the file attribute out, it defaults to read. But if we change this to write and give the file a new name, we could actually create the file with this command. So if we run this, we'll see that we have my new file 1 over here. That's another way of opening a file. But be careful using the write command, because if you have a file there already, and you use the write, it will overwrite the existing file and start fresh. So append is the best to use if you already have a file you want to add, and read only all other times to be sure that you don't write to the file. So there are two primary ways to open and process files in Python. The way I just showed you here is usually considered the wrong way. I showed it to you because you'll read it like this in a lot of cases, and I think it was more popular with the older versions of Python. But the problem with this particular method is that you didn't close the file. You would have to explicitly close the file with the my file close command, and that's all well and good. But if you don't use that, the file remains open. And again, for the files we're using here, the programs we're using here, Python would close the files automatically and everything would be okay. But if you have a lot of files and a bigger program, this will hurt the resources and potentially corrupt files. So this is not the preferred way to open and process files. I have the preferred way here. The main difference with using this format, the with statement on a new file, is this actually creates a block of code right here, and the file automatically closes when we exit out. So the block is signified by the indentation, but once the block of code is over, then the file is closed out automatically. So you don't have to think about it in your program. So let's take a look at this. We'll create a new file called Paul, read only, write, and we'll write some text to it. And there we have our new file over here called Paul, and the text that we wrote. Notice what happens if we run this program again. Now if we go to our Paul file, we see that we've only one statement. So what it did is it overwrote the original statement with the new statement, which in this case is the same. So be very careful with the write statement. So I'm going to change the attribute, file attribute, to read, and then we're going to read this file. The best way to read the file, and you're going to use this as you go into Excel processing and other files, is to create a variable called my file list. So now what we've done is we've created a list here that will take the information from the file, and this list will be available to us for the length of our program. So once this block of code closes out, we still have the contents of my list. So we're going to go down here and look at the what's in my list. And as you can see, we have the code here, even though this is outside of the block of code. So this is the preferred method, I feel, to read the contents of a file into Python. So to show you how to work with files, I've created a list of random names. I actually got this list from the internet. I hope this is not a real list, but the site was listofrandomnames.com. And I put that in a new list, in a new file called sample names. So we're going to open the file with the read-only attribute and call it names file. That's the variable for the file. And then we're going to copy the contents of that file into my list. So this will be accessible for us to use after the block of code prints out. So for example, if we want to print out the list of names, we would go for, and this should print out the list of names. So it does copy the list, but it copies white spaces in the file too. And this is very common with strings, and also incidentally, when you use Python and you copy to a file, it automatically uses it as a string. So that's something to consider if you're using numbers. You'll have to convert it to an integer when you take it out again. But for now, we have our list, but there's a white space between each name, and that's not what we want. So the way to get around that is to use the text strip function, which strips out the white spaces, and gives us a nicer list. So we'll run it now. We should have a cleaner list of names, and we do. To make this program more real world, let's say we have a process to verify names against a list. So we could have a print function that says the names have been verified. So if we run that, we get the list of names. But now we want to copy these names back into a file. We want to save this information so that when we get a name again, we can compare it against these verified names. And to do that, we would go over here and create a new file and call it verified names. To save our list of verified names to a file, we would open up the verified names file as append. Even though this is the first time we're writing to it, we would still want to have it append so that we don't have to change it, and we would just give it a variable vnames. And then we create a for loop for my list that was saved from the original open, and write the each name to the vnames variable, write it to the list. I put a /n here, which is important because if we don't put this in, it'll write it to one line and you have a list of names all across one line. We put the n as the carriage return, so it'll put it in list format. It'll put it each one under each name under each other. Okay, so if we run that, we should have our new file over here. It should have a list of our verified names, and it does. So now you can save the state of your program. This is a big step forward. Up until now, everything we wrote disappeared when the program ended. Now we can save it, and this will allow us to move to the next video, which we will be opening up Excel files, taking the information and processing that. So that's something real that you can use in your office or your home. And if you want the code for this video, please go to my website at pythonforadultsandkids.com. Please subscribe and share if you like this content. And thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.